guys, welcome to episode number 17 of the Danny Batten Fight Show. I'm your host, Si. Welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. Also, we're going to be talking all sorts of MMA, boxing, classic fights today. There's still not a great deal of current stuff going on in the fighting world, but we will have we'll talk about the recent UFC card which was announced before we get going. But just a little bit of housekeeping. As usual, all our shows are available, Ace Podcast Nation, youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. Please subscribe. That's the best way to get all the shows first, and also the best way to support the channel. And the audio versions are available at all your usual podcasting platforms and apps. And we have new live shows every Monday and Friday. Monday is our football show, the Andy Campbell Show. This coming Monday, we're hoping to have former Wales international, West Ham Cardiff defender, Mr. Daniel Gabardon, join us, as well as we have a live show every Friday with myself and stand-up comedian Ballistic Barry Phillips, which is an adult-only, light-hearted look at the world, parenting, and everything in between. So if you need something just to kick back with a beer on a Friday night and relax, that's I highly recommend. It's very fun. We've also got plenty of other new shows coming. On Sunday, we have a show with top MMA coach Richard Shaw, who will be joined me for a chat about all things MMA and answered some questions sent in with the people, which was a lot of fun. Very knowledgeable chap, a very friendly chap, so that was good fun. That's out Sunday. Thursday, so the day after this comes out, we also have our unscripted and uncensored episode number 14 with boxing media personality Benn Doherty, or I always pronounce his name wrong, I think it's Doherty, but Ben Doherty we'll go with, who's going to be a lot of fun. He answered all the people's questions, and I've got to say his boxing knowledge is massively impressive. He's like an encyclopedia of just dates and information. It was very impressive to witness in person. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to my co-host, former Cage Warriors champion, UK MMA legend, pioneer, coach,
Yeah, you right, sir?
Mr. Danny Batten. Welcome, my friend.
You all right, buddy? Yeah, all good.
All right, mate. And we're all discombobulated because we're recording this on a Tuesday, which is a bit new because obviously we've done it on a Sunday every week for air, and so it's all a bit strange. We're doing it early, and it's all over the shop. But
way out of sync from what we're used to.
Plenty to talk about. Yes, just going with something new. But just before we get into all the classic stuff, obviously UFC announced that what was it, UFC 249, I think it is. It's going ahead. Was it 249 or 247? 249, I think. It's going ahead. And what a card. 9th of May. It'll be obviously with no fans, no audience. But the full card is, and this is about as insane a card as I've ever seen. You could tell they've been, itching to put on a card. So the full main card is Verdum versus Oleinik, Esparza versus Waterson, Uriah Hall versus Jacare, Cerrone versus Pettis, Stevens versus Qatar, Ngannou versus Rosenstruck, Cejudo versus Cruz, and Ferguson versus Gaethje. What do you make of that, my friend?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun-packed event. It's a big shame that they're going ahead with no crowd because I think they do add to the atmospherics of it all. But yeah, that they are itching to get back, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and I think they've had to cancel a few cards, and obviously Dana White was working hard to not cancel those cards. He was being very bullish about it all.
Yeah.
That card, I don't remember many cards being that loaded ever. Even when they've had these kind of super cards, it's usually just the main 2 or 3 fights, which are really, really, strong kind of super fights. And then the lower cards will maybe have a couple of sleepers on it. But
yeah,
it's very rare you'll get a card where literally every fight is kind of like
about good.
just
Good
a
matchups,
real
really
good,
good
strong
matchups.
match. Yeah.
Sometimes it's not about just the size of the names. It is about them getting those matchups right, and them ones each one should be fireworks.
Indeed, and I think one of the points someone made to me, I think it was on Instagram, they said if you look at the card, really any of those fights could realistically main event either a pay per view or like a Fox or whatever. It's not
Yeah.
Fox now, is it? Like the ESPN TV shows, which they
Hmm.
do in between the pay per views. And when you
Mm.
look at it like that, and I looked through the card and I was like, oh yeah, they could, because like the Ngannou fight, Ngannou's main evented pay per views. Same
Yeah.
with Cejudo and Dominic Cruz. You got Ferguson, Gaethje, Cerrone. Is just coming off the back of main eventing with McGregor,
Yeah.
Uriah Hall, Michelle Waterson. They're all big names. Fabrizio Verdum.
Verdum.
It's just crazy.
Mm.
Any fights there which kind of really stick out for you that you think, oof, that's going to be a good
Yeah.
one?
Yeah. To me, I really like the idea of that, seeing that Qatar fight again. He's got really good boxing, and Jerry Stevens, he's an all-action stylist as well. I'm really interested to see Cruz fight against Cejudo. I think that's a really interesting matchup. Very, very different body compositions there. It's hard to predict how that's even going to steer as a stylistic fight. I really don't know how that's going to be. And of course, the big one, Tony Ferguson against Gaethje. I mean, that's got potential to be more exciting than Ferguson's original matchup with Khabib. I mean, these two just seem to have cardio for days and fearless. And you could argue they've both got a screw loose somewhere, not in a disrespectful
Yeah.
manner, but in the sense of their courageousness. I mean, that's like a particle collider that is clashing together. A really hard one to predict again. Both very, very durable, both fearless, and they just let it all hang out from the click of the bell. Very, very exciting. But like you
Yeah,
say,
it's going to
all the
be.
other ones are good, but they're the three ones that straight away it excited, my mindset. That they're the ones I want to watch all of them with absolute interest, but they're the three that really excited me. I wasn't sure Dominic Cruz was ever going to fight again, to be honest. Kind of
No,
surprised to see him on
no.
the card again. Just hope he's not rusty, because he does seem timing based. He's a sharp style fighter and footwork orientated fighter. I hope that he don't have the rust and he can sort of get his flow early on, because that would be a really interesting bout for me.
Yeah, I think the one advantage is obviously I don't think Cejudo's fought for quite a while, so at least
Mm.
one's not coming in kind of sharp and having fought recently.
Yeah,
I got to say, I wondered, same reason, but I think I said to you, whilst I was looking forward to a Gaethje McGregor fight, um, I felt that I didn't see McGregor taking it because I felt like it was too big a risk. If he
mm.
wants that Khabib rematch, I
Yeah,
didn't think I couldn't see him taking a risk on a fighter like Ferguson or
yeah,
Gaethje unless Dana White said you have to beat Ferguson if you want to face
yes,
Khabib again.
yeah,
I just didn't see him taking that fight because I felt like
mm.
Gaethje is capable of really, on any given night beating anyone. Um,
Yes,
and I kind of do think it is a bit of a risk for Ferguson. He doesn't. He don't care. He'll fight anyone. I get that, but like he's finally was getting his title shot, and if he loses to Gaethje, he ain't getting that title shot, and then
mm.
suddenly he'll be effectively third in the queue because you'd think Gaethje would have Khabib next.
Yeah,
Then I would assume Conor is probably going to get Khabib left next, or assuming Khabib beat Gaethje, you'd assume Conor's going to get the next shot after that. I mean,
yeah,
they could do. I think the Gaethje Ferguson winner, the winner could face Khabib, and the loser could
yeah,
face Conor, I guess. But
yeah,
it's a risk
yeah. I
for
mean,
Ferguson for sure.
yeah. For me, Geisha and Ferguson, that they're two people that are really going to run it at Khabib, and if Khabib can't get early control of them, could find himself getting pushed into deep water, with being proper rocked on the feet for the first time. or maybe pushing his cardio to a point where he just can't keep controlling. They're both going to fight to exhaustion. They're used to doing it. He ain't used to being pushed and getting tired. He's always controlled every fighter. But these are two fighters that if you don't get control of them, you're going to be into a physical war, an absolute physical war of nutrition as well. Absolutely interesting for me, either of them two fighting Khabib.
Which is the other thing is I think both Ferguson and Gaethje are both probably stronger than Conor on the floor and in the
I
kind
agree.
of.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
that's another aspect to it. Obviously, I think Conor's a lot better, by the way, in defense on the floor and grappling and wrestling than people give him credit for. You know,
yeah, I agree.
he's no rookie, but it's not his main strength. Um,
Yeah,
and as we've discussed numerous times, like Conor didn't. I didn't think he implemented an aggressive enough game plan against Khabib on his feet.
yeah,
Whereas Ferguson and Gaethje will both be very, very aggressive. They only know how to
yeah,
fight that
yeah,
aggressive
yeah.
style on their feet, but they can also, particularly Ferguson. Ferguson's very, very, very good. From a jiu-jitsu point of view. Um,
Mm,
so he'll be looking to get submissions from the ground.
yeah,
He won't mind. We've seen Ferguson get the absolute crap kicked out of him, and his face all smashed up in all sorts of ways, and still
mm,
pull out something special, whether a submission or a KO or a finish.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so he won't be afraid of being mauled by Khabib on the floor, because he'll still be looking for something,
Yeah,
from a
could,
counter-attacking
could,
point of view.
yeah, Ferguson could beat Khabib at any time. He could put it away with a funky submission, a crazy strike from in guard with the elbows, cause it perhaps a fight stopping cut, and on the feet, he's creative. Knees, jumping elbows, spinning elbows. He'll fire it all at Khabib. Anything could potentially stop it. I think he has more potential ways of winning than Khabib does. Khabib, there's no secret. We know what he's going to be doing. We know what he wants each and every time. No one's come up with a plan or able to match him in his strengths to stop it being any other way. The difference with Ferguson is he doesn't care where the fight is. You don't care if he's on his back. He's dangerous. He can finish you with submissions or strikes off his back. It's not going to bother him. All you will know is that he won't stop working and he won't stop hunting for something to finalise that fight. For 5 rounds, that's a big ask of anyone, including the best of Khabib.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to a certain degree, I feel similar about the Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz fight. I feel like
Mm,
Cejudo didn't. He wasn't that convincing in his previous fight. Um,
mm,
he took a bit of criticism, and Dominic Cruz, a fit Dominic Cruz, is perfectly capable of beating most people.
yeah,
But like you say, it's just whether he's fully up to speed and how many
yeah,
rounds he's been able to, particularly with the coronavirus everywhere. How many
yeah,
rounds have these guys been able to spar in training
yeah,
and really get
mm,
into it? I suppose it would
mm,
depend, when Dominic Cruz was back from his injury, back training. Obviously, if he's
mm,
been training since the start of the year, then
yeah,
he would have got he would have got uh, some rounds in with people, but it's just whether he's been back that long. I'm not 100% sure how long he has been back. Francis Ngannou fight will be an interesting one because you know after he took that loss,
mm,
and he just didn't look the same for a few fights,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden he found that winning thread again, and he just looked back to that kind of
mm,
invincible heavyweight beast who just had
sure,
previously looked like there was no one who was going to stop him.
yeah,
It's interesting, really, isn't it? How, like, from a confidence point of view, for particularly these guys who go on like a tear of just KOing guys in seconds.
yeah,
We saw recently with Johnny Walker. looked unbeatable. There was talk of putting
Yeah,
him up against John Jones and this and that, and then suddenly he lost, and all of a sudden he didn't look unbeatable, and he lost
yeah,
again.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
all of a sudden, everyone's calling him a an overhyped fighter and this and that.
yeah.
It's
Because it
that
wasn't like he
that
was.
loss
It,
when you're on a winning streak can
sure,
bring more
I
than
think
one
the
thing to a halt.
I think the problem for him there was he didn't lose in a good way. He looked terrible. He looked like he was really lacking in areas in a big way for a UFC stage, let alone looking for a title shot. But that all got overlooked because a lot of the fights were quick that he was having. He was looking really convincing. It goes to show, it's either the effect of the placebo for a fighter beginning to perhaps believe their own hype and believe they're invincible, and it makes them all just let it hang out. And he was just notching up those wins, and maybe that placebo is no longer in effect for him. Or it might have just been, just the way it goes. The fight game's a funny old thing. You stick two fighters together. You could have one fighter that's a lot less skillful than another, and 9 out of 10 times, one fighter will win over the other. But it only takes that one to show up on the night that matters that can make it look a very different fight. It's certainly going to be interesting to see what happens in the future for his career. He's still really young. That's what he's got in his favour. Got a great body composition. And time will tell whether he's got a great team to hold his hand past this little dip in his career. But I think we're going to see him come back better and stronger, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's got too much talent to just
Yeah,
fade away. But it has been known also that that first loss, and then some fighters don't recover, and
yeah,
it's
this can
not
happen.
for a lack of talent or a lack of lack of ability or lack of hard work. Even
Mm,
it's just a mental thing. You see it with
yeah,
boxers, you see it with cage fighters. It's just once they get knocked out for the first time, and even guys who are not on like a like a brutal
mm,
unbeaten tear of KOing people. It's just guys who've never been knocked out. That first KO, it's particularly if it's like a bit of a shock or a flash KO or a out of the blue.
yeah,
It can change the way they view fighting. Would you agree with
mm,
that?
mm. Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. Funny how well the fight game. Trust me. It's, you
You know
think it's
better than me.
predictable, but really not always is. But that's the
Oh
beauty of
yes,
it. Yeah.
that's why it's so exciting. And speaking of exciting, the first classic bout we will look at today is Nigel Benn versus Chris Eubank, 1 from the 18th of November 1990.
Mm,
We did another watch party for this. So what I've been doing is on a Sunday morning, um, on the Ace Podcast Nation Facebook page. So it's facebook.com/AceCast Nation. Is I've been basically because I've got to watch them anyway for the shows. If it's something which is available on YouTube or similar. I've
mm,
been doing a watch party on Facebook, so we had another few good, I think, 100 odd comments, people joining in and watching. We watched the Chris Eubank Nigel Benn fight, and then we watched the Royce Gracie fight afterwards. So yeah, guys, if you're free on a Sunday morning, we normally do them around sort of 10 o'clock. So obviously next Sunday we'll be watching Nigel Benn versus Chris Eubank 2, and I forget what we said we were going to watch next on the MMA front, but we'll come back to that at the end of the show. Um, Overall thoughts on Chris Eubank versus Nigel Benn 1, my friend?
yeah, I really enjoyed watching it. It's a pretty skillful event between them both. Very different stylists as well. They both got a very different approach. And but the big thing that made this fight so exciting is really, perhaps all the build up to it. Perhaps that's what makes the fight so exciting. I mean, we come from that era where we knew what their rivalry was all about, and when you're actually living through that rivalry, it made the fight even more exciting at the times. But I absolutely relish looking back at this one. Yeah, it was a really, really good fight. Just I know he was, perhaps more hated Chris Eubank than loved back at that time. But I just love that character. It was so unique, very very good.
Yeah, it was interesting. He's an entertainer. If nothing
Yeah,
else, Chris
yeah,
Eubank, he's one of those guys who just would entertain. One
yeah.
thing which was very obvious to me, particularly as they built up for the first rounds after they did their ring walks, is Nigel Benn did not like Chris Eubank one bit. He
No,
had a
he did
real
not.
look of hatred in his eyes before that
Mm,
fight.
mm,
Um, and as I was watching that, because I couldn't remember how the fight had gone or anything like that, um, I watched it and I thought, is that going to play into it? Is he going to make a mistake because he's
mm.
so, he's kind of so wound up and he's got that, he's taking it personally almost and too emotional. Um,
Yeah.
I got to say the fight didn't go as I had thought it went in my head. Obviously,
Mm,
I was 9 at the time, but um, I had remembered it being more in Chris Eubank's favour.
yeah. Yeah. I found some of the rounds quite hard to give a crisp decision on who I think won any of the rounds. To be honest, you know, as much as I've been a fighter, I'm not a boxing purist. Always been a fan of boxing, but for that fact, we are just fans of it at the end of the day. And yeah, to try and judge it was really quite hard. I think fights are a little bit easier for a fan to watch these days because they'll show up who's got who's landed the most shots, how many are thrown. They've got these computers to throw up all the statistics, but back then it was not the case. We don't have such good technology to sort of like steer your thoughts on how the fight was really going. So I did find some of the rounds a little bit difficult. Like, oh, which way would I really sway with it? But for the fan point of view, absolutely enjoyed watching it. Every round to me had something in it that threw up a little excitement. Certainly not the best fight in the world either, but it certainly wasn't boring to watch. I quite enjoyed it.
No, so we'll briefly kind of go through each round.
Yeah,
Obviously, it didn't go the full. It's our first boxing match, which hasn't gone the full
sure.
12. Um, so round one, what did you make of it?
Well, even before the round one, I was already getting on the edge of my seat just with the way Chris Eubank swaggers over to Nigel Benn, and he puts his glove out, and Nigel Benn smacks his hand down. This guy's got malice, and I mean, got me. Well, I watched this back when I was a young lad as well, and sort of my memories were of it that Ben comes out like a bull in a china shop, and that was what I was expecting, but it wasn't quite the case. He did stalk Eubanks, but was missing a lot. And both Eubanks was missing a lot as well. I noticed in the first round. And my first observation was is how tall Eubanks always stays. He always stays up quite tall. The chin not overly tucked. Certainly won't up by any stretch, but because of his straight posture, it always looks like his chin might be accessible, but always keeps himself quite elusive. Very, very distance aware type of fighter. I think Eubanks has got like a karate background, if I'm right, and maybe that's why we're seeing this slightly more upright, this straight back style. But the other observation was really how low Nigel Benn would go. He'd go so low, he's almost ducking under the waistline, which you can only but imagine made him a hard target to hit. So I did notice a lot of misses. Nigel Benn was a lot more composed than I thought he was in my first hindsight thought of how this fight went. Um, but overall, if I was forced to give it to anyone, like I say, I may well be getting this wrong, but I thought Eubanks might have edged it on a little bit more precise in the middle of the rounds. Um, but
Mm.
really could have gone either way. I mean, Nigel Benn was the one pushing Chris Eubank back. I just felt like Chris Eubank was doing nicer looking flurries that seemed to be a little bit more effective. I just saw Ben missing a lot for me.
See, that's quite interesting because I gave the first round to Nigel Benn simply because I felt like he was pushing Eubank back. I felt like Eubank was more concerned with being elusive and making sure he didn't get connected with any of these early
Mm,
big shots. And to be fair, he did it very, very well.
yeah,
Chris Eubank, say what you will about his punching and his record or his career, whether you like him, you hate him, whatever.
mm,
As a boxer, trying not to get hit,
yeah,
he is one of the very best. He's
yeah,
very difficult to lay a glove on, But yeah, like you say, because he's so tall, it does seem like his chin's there, but people
Yeah,
find it very difficult to hit it.
yeah, yeah.
Like the
And one
first
of the
couple of
things as
punch,
well,
first couple. Sorry,
Eubank.
mate. I was
So,
going to
oh,
go
sorry,
on.
we crossed it over each other here a little bit. Sorry. The other thing is, as well, whenever a shot did reach the head of Eubanks, he would kind of turn his head in the direction it come from. So if it was a left hook, he would look to his right on the point of impact. So he really knew how to ride out punches that did get through.
Hmm.
Obviously, got really, really acute with reactions, basically. Whether that's, you could say that's a skill set thing or an instinctual thing, call it what you will, but nevertheless, it saved him, because we all know Nigel Benn was a big banger, really had mean intentions. But yeah, that was one thing that impressed me. But it almost turned into a MMA match at one point, because coming in so low with that head, Nigel Benn, he ended up getting his head stuck right underneath the arm of Chris Eubanks, and lift him up in the air. I thought I was going to see a body slam going down.
Yeah, Eubanks, his footwork is so crisp. He's so light on his feet, and he's circling Nigel Benn all the time. Even though
Yeah,
Benn's the one who's kind of pushing forward, trying to really get into it. Eubank is just really, he's never still. He's never in the same place for too long,
yeah, yeah,
and it's a big part of why. Um, and yeah, like you said, Nigel Benn was so low down a lot of the time.
yeah,
Early on in the round, Chris Eubank did try and hit a couple of heavier shots, as
yeah,
they sort of clinched up, and then Nigel Benn was very low, and he tried to
yeah.
sort of hit him, but he didn't really connect. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, I think it was a pretty even round, I suppose. I just felt early on in the fight, I felt like Chris Eubank wasn't quite finding his rhythm with his punches. I felt like his footwork and his body movement, his head movement, I thought they were outstanding.
Yeah,
But I felt like his punches weren't quite
yeah,
finding the spot, and maybe he wasn't quite finding his rhythm. Whereas
mm,
Nigel
mm.
Benn, possibly because he's a bit more frenetic and a bit more, he's really pushing forward. So he seems like even when he's not connecting and he hasn't got his rhythm, he still
Yeah,
seems like he's being quite attacking and getting somewhere because he's
sure.
pushing forward. Whereas
Yeah, I
obviously
mean
Eubank is sitting back a bit further.
I tried not to get caught up too much in that, because I know that happens to me. Sometimes the person being aggressive is the person I actually cast my eye on, and the counter punches of the person that is footworking back, it could get overlooked a little bit. And I tried not to do that. And I watched back that first round several times to try to really judge, which way round it. And I still, I just felt like, Eubank was just perhaps just being, landing a little bit more. He Everything that he was throwing had a real thought process behind it. Nigel Benn for me was missing a little bit, but yeah, you're right. You do find yourself falling into habit of watching Benn, because he looks like he's stalking and he's being predatorial. But boxing can't be won on just footwork in a way where you're getting the fighter to the edge. You still got to be landing your shots more often. I didn't feel that was the case in that round, but who knows? It'd be interesting to get
Yeah.
a boxing purist's point of view on that. To
Yeah,
be
well, I'm
fair,
hoping we'll have Ben Doherty, who I mentioned earlier. I'm hoping he's going
mm,
to join us, particularly when we get back into live sport. I'm hoping to
yeah,
get him on to cover some of the boxing with us, but I'm hoping also to maybe get him on for some of these, even if he does just join us for the kind of this part with the boxing,
sure,
because it just gives a different opinion, different view of looking at things.
yeah,
He's going to look at it from a boxing point of view, whereas you're looking at it from a striking point of view and and a movement point of view, but
mm,
from an MMA background.
yeah, yeah,
So it'll be interesting to see if there's a difference when you
mm,
get someone who's looking at it completely from a boxing point of view.
sure,
Um, Round two, straight away in the first couple of minutes, we have like a couple of headlocks where they're
yeah,
kind of clinching and Nigel Benn's so low. I thought Eubank
mm,
again, head movement and footwork just unbelievable.
yeah,
But Nigel Benn starting to land a few more shots in this second round, and
yeah,
also I noticed that in one of the clinches, I think about midway through, Eubank gets turned around in the clinch, so he's got his back to Nigel Benn, and
yeah,
Nigel Benn was not did not mind giving him a nice jab, a nice dig in the kidneys,
Yeah.
just to let him know he was there. And then
Yeah.
literally about 30 seconds later, right at the end of the round, actually, it's just in the last minute of the round, all that happened. Just after that little dig, I think it riles Eubank up a bit, and he
Yeah.
comes forward, and Nigel Benn hits him with a big right cross. I think it was a right cross,
Yeah.
and it actually connects. And then
Yeah.
Eubank finishes off the round very, very aggressively, and I think that culminated from the kidney blow, and then getting hit straight after. That
Yeah.
he almost, maybe it woke him up a bit, maybe it irritated him a bit. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
what did you
Well,
make of round two? I thought
yeah.
Eubank
Round
took round
two.
two.
I think Eubanks to me is got a high IQ in terms of what's going on around when it's happening live, and I think he assessed what was happening in that first round. I think knowing the quite extreme head movements that Nigel Benn was bringing by bringing his head down as low as he did, looping it left and right as he was making him quite a hard target, and to punish that movement, I think that's why you saw him leaning on his head a lot. And so numerous times you see him blocking Nigel Benn's head down. So that does two things. It might put him off from the idea of perhaps moving his head in that fashion to make himself elusive, because it's actually quite tiring to have your head blocked down like that. So I think, Chris Eubank was thinking, okay, let's block his head down, let's punish him for that type of defense, and also, tire him out, because you're carrying that person's weight on the back of your neck. All your back muscles have to come into play, your leg muscles to stop being collapsed to the floor. But you did see Benn get more accurate with his shots in this round. His pressure was beginning to show a little bit. And yeah, you did see Benn go round to the back again because the head was being blocked down. Benn then tried to counter it by rising his head up and going round towards the rear of Chris Eubanks. And yeah, you had a nice little flurry where Eubanks was finishing the round really strong. And again, this makes this round really hard to judge again. But for me, I would edge this for Benn, just because the rest of the round to me was in his favour. Yes, Chris Eubanks and better. So don't tell me you got this the other way around.
I did, yeah. I had Eubank winning this one, but I think that was
That's funny.
mainly I had it about even, and then just
Yeah.
rewatching it just now, I changed my mind and I gave it to
Right.
Eubank, and I think that was mainly because of the amount of punches he landed in that last
In that
minute.
end. Yeah. And again,
And
this is where we need.
I make that mistake in MMA. I think we discussed it a few weeks back,
Mm,
whereby when one fighter finishes the round,
yeah.
in that last 45 seconds to a minute, if one fighter finishes particularly strongly or finishes in
Yeah.
mount and ground and pound,
Sure.
that sometimes can be enough to take the round in the eyes of the
Mm,
judges.
yeah.
Really, they could have been dominated for the 2 minutes prior in a
Sure.
different way.
Yeah, I think, or I'd like to think, there's a misconception. I mean, a really good
Yes.
judge shouldn't be doing that. They should be judging the entirety of the round. I'm sure they'll have their statistics written down of what's happened in the round on a piece of paper. And okay, it's statistically they're dead even, and one guy finished on a flurry. Yeah, okay, that's going to give it the sway either way. But for me, I just felt like Nigel Benn was scoring, looking more effective than Chris Eubank. And yeah, Eubank's finished strong. And yeah, maybe as a big boxing judge, they might give it to Eubank because of that. But I'm trying to take in the whole around and what I feel. My gut instinct was to go with Benn on that one. But like I said at the beginning of this, I found some of the rounds very difficult to score.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. They're so close.
Yeah,
Round three, I definitely had for Nigel Benn.
yeah,
Particularly I just felt like, although Eubank hit some lovely shots in this round, I felt like Nigel Benn really found his rhythm in round three. Really
yeah,
started to work those shots. It's that the way he's avoiding Eubank's jab, and his combinations is to basically go down on his haunches and just
yeah,
move from side. It's bizarre to watch,
yeah,
and you're kind of waiting for Eubank to just steady himself and kind of punch downwards instead of still going for combinations. But
yeah.
yeah, if I thought round three was definitely Nigel Benn's. What about you?
Yeah, I thought, pretty similar to yourself. Eubanks did have singular successes with some of his shots, but Benn kind of managed to get him in front of him a little bit more. Eubanks wasn't footworking quite so fluently as he did in the previous 2 rounds. Had his hands lower as well in retraction, and was kind of like going toe heel as he retracted back, which kind of expressed a little bit of tiredness, which is kind of strange to see so early on, because I can't say that was the case in some of the latter rounds. But his guard just dropped a little bit more. His footwork weren't looking so pretty; it was looking heavier. And Nigel Benn was just looking like he was just having the better of it steadily all the way through. Yeah, I would have given that one to Benn.
Yeah, and I felt like actually this round and the next round, Nigel Benn really stepped it up a bit. I thought his work rate was higher, his footwork became a lot better, and what you found is where he was keeping his aggression, but his head movement and his footwork was so good, and his work rate with his hands, his guard was higher. Everything was like a higher intensity, and what you found then is Eubank was suddenly seemed to be stood in front of him a lot more. Whereas those early rounds, Eubank had been circling and moving and ducking and diving, and I felt like that was a testament to how well Nigel Benn upped his intensity in round 3 and then into round 4. I felt like round 4 was his strongest round so far.
I agree.
And I felt like Eubank actually struggled a little bit in round 4, and it was quite obvious that maybe not necessarily like a fight-ending sequence, but it was quite obvious that Eubank now realised, he was really in a fight. There was one particular shot in round 4 where, as he's coming out of a combination, Nigel Benn hits a left hook to the ribs, and it catches Eubank just above his hip, between his hip bone and his rib cage, and he visibly not only winces but kind of goes off balance as well. And
he does staggers, doesn't he?
We've talked about the damage that body shots do, and funnily enough, Benn mentioned the same thing in our show about, from a boxing point of view, just those body shots people don't realise, people who've not fought in combat sports or martial arts, they don't realise how much a good hook or a good kick to the ribs, how much it takes out of you. Both in the short term from like losing your breath or a cracked rib or that, but then later on into the round or into the fight. What did you make of round 4? Did you see it as Nigel Benn's again?
He's sort of roughing Eubanks up. Eubanks had a good flurry at one point, but that's about all that he had, was just one little successful flurry. But that was in the early part. But getting knocked off balance the way he did, covering up, he really shelled up, didn't he? And also I noticed a difference in the clinch was Benn was happy to hit at the body in that clinch. Eubanks was choosing not to really strike in the clinch. It makes you feel that maybe Nigel Benn was a fitter of the two, or just more eager to score every which way he could. But yeah, absolutely, Benn to me was the one that has having success in round 4.
But do you think that was also where Nigel Benn upped his work rate? So he was working more in the clinch compared to maybe in the earlier rounds. He was giving like a half-hearted sort of poke in the ribs, whereas these were proper shots in the clinch.
I think it probably appeared that way, but I think that he was going at pretty much a similar pace that he did in the previous rounds. I just think we see Eubank slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
So it was making Benn look a little more tidy, a little more successful. Maybe he did minorly increase his work rate, but not by a lot from the other rounds. I just think because Eubanks wasn't matching him, it made it look like he was doing more than perhaps he did in the previous rounds. But I feel like his pace was just more steady and just wasn't slowing down. It's a little bit like 100-meter sprints. A lot of people think that when someone like Usain Bolt comes on strong at the end, he's picked up a faster pace, when quite often it's all about relaxation and form. It's just the others are decelerating quicker. I just think we're seeing Chris Eubank decelerate and Nigel Benn wasn't.
So going into round 5, I had it 3-1 to Benn, and you had it as 2-all.
3-1 to Benn. I had it 3-1 to Benn as well. Yeah, it's just the 1 and 2 round we had reverse on who we thought won it.
I see. Okay. So round 5, what did you make of that?
Sorry, I have to get my glasses on here. Yeah, okay, so yeah, I found Eubank was Eubank was getting some of his accuracy back. I noticed that he was getting some more of his single shots going together. He weren't doing like massive combinations, but I feel like Eubanks was almost getting like a second wind here. It just looked like he was getting a bit more fire in his boots. I think maybe he had had a little pep talk in the corner, and knew maybe things were beginning to change. The tide was beginning to change, and he had to kind of meet force on force a little bit. And I felt like that he was doing that. And this is another one where I had to look back and again a couple of times to decide who I thought won it. But I was going to give this one to Eubank. So I felt like he was actually getting Benn to go back a little bit.
Yeah, he found his footwork again, round
Yeah,
5 straight away. Yeah, and up to the end, his feet were moving quick.
yeah,
He was light on his feet. I felt like he got his left jab really into this in this 5th round.
yeah,
He used it a lot,
yeah,
and you could see. I think he knew that his level in round 4 was not good enough,
yeah,
whether it be his footwork or his general work. Because when he came out, he just looked again like Nigel Benn had in the 4th round. He
yeah,
looked like he was more intense. And when he
yeah,
finished the round, he raised his arms to the crowd as if to say, come on.
yeah,
So I think that tells you that he was happy with, one, how round 5 had gone, but
yeah.
also I think he was looking for a reaction from
Sure.
himself, or whether his crowd was
Mm,
his camp were looking for a reaction from him.
yeah,
Nigel Benn still hit some shots. It's still, and even these rounds, like round 4, I gave to, we both gave to Nigel Benn comfortably,
yeah,
but like you mentioned, Eubank still had a little flurry which connected, and same for
yeah,
Nigel Benn. There was
yeah.
still
And that
points.
round 5 as well, it was perhaps the first bit of seeing that eye blow up. So obviously some of those shots got in.
Yeah,
And I think it was those single jabs that maybe started to hit home. But
yeah.
yeah, this is where we started seeing some
Start of
damage.
round
And
6, he hits some jabs to the eye straight in the early on in round 6 as well,
yeah, I
which get
think he was
through.
struggling to see in round 6, because I felt like some of these shots were getting in, which you would think he would see coming, and he wasn't. So I think this started to really trouble him.
Yeah, there was a couple of shots in round 6 where it felt like earlier he was swaying or going down low to avoid them when he saw them come
Mm,
in or the combinations come in. And in round 6, he felt like he was still moving his feet, but he was still, the shots were getting through and his head was
yeah.
getting snapped back
Yeah,
a
he
few
wasn't coming
times.
forward. If you
No,
notice
he
in
was
this one,
trying to
that
hit
there
those
were,
weird body jabs, which
yeah,
that's one. Maybe you can explain it to me. There's one punch which I've never really understood fighters doing. Is that kind of, it's like a jab to the front of the stomach. It never gets
yeah,
through, and if it does, it kind of kisses the other fighter. Um,
yeah, yeah.
I've
Quite
never
often this is
really
just
got it.
when arms begin to drift down a little bit as rounds go on. Doing a jab to the body shot. I mean, no body shot's nice, as we just mentioned, and sometimes throwing a shot down to that body, you can't just feint to the body. With that, you've got to try and put something in that's going to create a reaction, so that when you do go for that shot again, it can open up some opportunities to the head. I can only presume that this was what he was hoping to do. Eubanks was perhaps making a little bit of a meal of these low blows, as we saw.
Well,
Um,
there were low blow in the round 6. I said this in the chat in the watch party.
yeah,
Um, you look at the reaction to Bernard Hopkins last week when he
mm,
got hit with a low blow, which wasn't really
mm,
a low blow.
no,
It didn't, and he made the meal of it because he was getting
tired and
outclassed by
yeah,
Calzaghe at that point. Whereas Eubank, at the point where he gets hit with the low blow, is starting to really put some hurt on Nigel Benn. He's blown up his
yeah,
eyes, cut his lip, so he's not
mm,
interested in, you know, um, kind of dragging it out or having a little breather. He wants
mm,
to get
mm,
straight back into it, and you can see that it's almost like it clicks with him. Like he's
yeah,
kind of like as if coaches will always say to anyone of any age, if you get hit in
mm,
the bits, take a minute,
yeah,
get your bearings, get
that's
yourself
it.
composed. But he
Mm,
kind
mm,
of thinks and thinks, and then he goes, actually, I don't need this.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and win this fight. And he comes
Yeah.
out and he hits in the rest from the low blow to the end of the round. I would love to know how many left jabs he hits, because it's almost like if it was a video game, I'd say he's spamming the button where he's just continually clicking it and clicking it and clicking it.
Sure.
Nigel Benn does get some nice body shots in this
He
round.
does, yeah, he does, yeah, and you know, you got to wonder how the judges score that. Do you see, sort of like done like an uppercut hook to the body, and it had a visual effect on Eubanks. You know, I'm surprised Eubanks was able to keep up a good pace, but his elbows were really tight against his body after that body shot. So I think, you know, it definitely done some good work going to the body, and you can see Benn was hunting for it.
Blow, by the way.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, Nigel Benn was getting the success to the body, but Chris Eubanks was getting success to that head and bad, you know, that ever worsening eye. Very difficult round to score overall. You know, who did you give that one to?
I gave round 6 to Eubank.
Right, yeah,
I will
for
say
the
at
overall
the end
work.
of round 6. So you know, we said at the end of round 5, Eubank raised his arms to the crowd, and I felt that was like a bit of a gesture, almost for himself, to say, "No, I'm back now." That was, you know, I had a bad round. Whereas at the end of round 6, Nigel Benn kind of bounced around and did that a little bit. He didn't raise his arms, but he did a similar kind of, and I felt like that was him trying to convince himself that he was still in it.
Yeah.
Do you see what it like?
Sure.
But then I think it worked, because at the start of round 7, Nigel Benn came out on fire. He hit some really good shots in the clinch, and then all of a sudden, Eubank hits a nice uppercut. But
Nigel it was Benn really nice.
Hits this just after Eubank hits that uppercut in the start of the 7th round. Just after a flurry from Nigel Benn, Nigel Benn hits a jab, and I tell you what, the speed of it, the speed of it is just incredible. Really snapped it. Really, and the camera angle, even, you know, with these rubbish, not, you know, they're not 4K cameras like we're used to these days. They're you know, it's standard definition and non-digital and all this sort of thing. But you can see the from the camera angle where it's just above. It really showed the speed of the punch. It's impressive. What did you make of this? What are we on? Round 7, isn't it?
Yeah, round 7. Yeah, I mean, you get Eubank's footworking back a little bit, but he's still getting shots through. I just feel that Nigel Benn knows this eye's bad, and just trying to get a hold of this fight. He's really gritting, but I just think Chris Eubank was just too fresh, too savvy to be bullied to a point where any of the rounds was going to be potentially stopped. I think this was a race to try to get something really established for Nigel Benn, and you really got a sense of that effort. But I mean, scoring wise, this was hard for me. I found my eyes being cast on Nigel Benn because of his efforts to try and establish something conclusive, but I felt like he was still getting hit a lot. I gave this one to Eubank, but I was umming and ahhing. Which way did you give round 7?
I struggled a bit with it. I was leaning towards Eubank, but I also felt like Eubank had the more shots, and he was more controlled. But I also felt that Nigel Benn shots were maybe doing a bit more damage. Or at least maybe not doing more damage, but landing like kind of clean shots. If that makes sense.
But
you know, obviously,
at that latter part though, there was it could easily get overlooked. Eubanks throws a 1-2, and Nigel Benn did stagger back a little bit, and Eubanks won a little bit of a flurry there. But then you had this low blow incident that come on, and maybe that's a little telltale sign that maybe Chris Eubanks was finding this pace that Nigel Benn was putting on. Find a little, but you know, these body shots he was throwing, I felt like they weren't scoring a lot of the time. Eubanks had already brought his elbows real in close. So as much as Nigel Benn was being really active, he was being really active against the blocks of Eubank. So I don't know. I mean, if that sort of shot scores, I could argue with myself to give Benn that round on activity. But if you're going to do it on crisp shots and you're landing and actually scoring, I feel like that was going Eubank's way. Yeah, difficult.
Yeah, I think so. Round 8,
Round 8, yeah,
interesting one.
yeah, round 8. Let me just see what I got down here for this. Yeah, but got down here about Nigel Benn was getting a little bit more wild now, and I think this is due to that eye. I just think his vision was getting worse and worse because he was almost going back to the ropes, which told me he wasn't of clear vision to keep walking forward. It's almost like, well, okay, I've got to let Chris Eubanks come on to me to get my shots going. He was throwing out jabs and weren't seeing the jabs coming back as well. I noticed that with Nigel Benn, he was throwing out really fast jabs, were kind of
Yes.
missing, and then he was getting connected with by Eubanks. And again, I think this was all down to his eye. Nigel Benn did stop throwing some hooks, some real meaning at hooks, but again, that distancing was just not there. But because he was putting so much venom in those shots, he managed to score that knockdown. Um, you got to score it as a knockdown. I think it just hit him and it made him miss foot a little bit. It went, but he wasn't rocked by any stretch. So yeah, I think it was right to be scored as a knockdown, but I don't think it was actually. I don't think it actually damaged Eubanks in any way. But
No,
this was
no.
really what I think Nigel Benn was searching for. He was looking to try to really dig deep to create something. I think he was intending for that to happen in the previous round, but it happened in this round nevertheless. But I just think he couldn't get the finish because his eye was just hampering him too much. He backpedaled again. He didn't press onto Eubanks consistently. And that goes to tell me there was something wrong. There was clearly no problem with his energy levels because he was throwing such fast hooks, but they were just nearly all out the range. Okay, he got the knockdown in that round, but he was throwing and missing an awful lot as well, and that's tiring. And Chris Eubanks is good at that. He's good at making boxers miss and make them begin to tire, and then he gets gets that precision that maintains throughout the fight, and he starts stealing rounds off people. But that said, the knockdown has to be scored, and you have to really give it to Nigel Benn in that round. But it was not a convincing round by any stretch. He only won that round because of the knockdown.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. It was a very, very interesting round. I agree.
Mm,
You've got to score the knockdown.
yeah.
Nigel Benn hit a couple of really nice shots, and
Mm,
I noticed that I think it was just after, it might have been just before the knockdown, but
mm.
when he hit Eubank with a really nice combination, and Eubank's hands were pretty much down by his waist,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
um, and you could tell Nigel Benn felt like he won this round because he mocks Eubank as they walk off because they go to the same corner,
yeah,
and he kind of mocks Eubank's strut.
yeah.
So Nigel Benn, despite the damage to his face and eye, is feeling
Mm,
pretty confident. It's that
yeah.
right hook, isn't it? It catches him right behind the
That's
ear
right.
and
Yeah,
knocks him down. But
yeah,
Eubank's not. He doesn't seem affected by it in any way because he's straight back
yeah.
up. Um,
I just think it was a strange place to get hit. It was like you say, it was behind the
Behind
ear.
the ear,
The
wasn't
ear.
it?
He clearly didn't see it coming, and it kind of pushed him diagonally forward. Um, we know that Nigel Benn's a pretty big banger, so yeah, it kind of it made him stumble with his rear foot, his right foot, and that sort of sent him to the canvas. But it was a punch that landed that led him to being on the canvas, so it has to score. But I just don't think it knocked him dizzy in any way. He wasn't ruffled by it. It just meant, unfortunately, for Chris Eubank, he lost the round because of it. But I don't think he was perturbed by it by any stretch. I think Benn was trying to convince himself that that was something that was going to be a turnaround for the fight.
Yeah, yeah. The next round, sorry, round 8, isn't it?
Yeah,
Is it? Yeah,
that was round
round
eight,
8. The
wasn't it?
next round. Sorry, yeah.
Was that
Round
was round
round
eight?
9.
We're in round nine, aren't
Yeah,
we now?
straight away, they clinch up. Nigel Benn hits a really nice right hook on as they break from not quite a clinch, but they kind of
Mm,
come together as if they're going to clinch, and then as they break
mm,
away from each other,
mm.
Nigel Benn hits a lovely right hook. Nigel Benn looks quite confident now, even though he's got the damage to his eye.
Yeah,
But Eubank, I think, looks focused. He looks
yeah,
like he is really just waiting for that, waiting to pick his shot.
Yeah.
His head is very steady. His feet are planted, which tells me that he's waiting and lining up that kind of big combination. Whereas when he was circling early on and he's moving around the ring to avoid getting hit, that to me says that he's going to look to score points from counter punching. But in terms of this round, I felt like yes, his footwork is still there, but whenever he's lining up any sort of punch, he's planted and putting a bit on it, shall we say?
Yeah. I feel that Chris Eubank's balance was just showing to be a little bit better. He was getting that jab still going into Benn's face. I just think he wanted to aggravate that eye. It never really looked like Eubanks was ever trying to intend to knock Ben down or knock Ben out. With the way he was throwing that jab, it looked like his conservative energy just wanted to try to keep out of harm's way. He'd been knocked down in that previous round, and I think he didn't want that to happen for another round. I think he just thought of trying to get ahead with that jab, stay ahead with that jab, and just to try to nullify the previous round to try to get another round in the bag for himself. But like I say, I don't think he was intending to. He knocked him, he rocked him, and he went on a flurry. He tasted blood. He knew Nigel Benn was hurt, and he kind of stayed on him really. And then we see the referee take a close look when he parted Benn and Eubanks. He took a good look at Nigel Benn.
Corner.
Yeah, he did. He really
Nigel
looked
Benn
into his eyes.
And just in the corner when before he parted them, his head was rocking back with every punch. And, If you go back like you just said and you watch the referee from the moment Eubank takes him into the corner and his head snapping back, and Nigel Benn's head snapping back with those big shots and the big combination, the referee's eyes are focused solely on Nigel Benn. They are looking at him to see if he's defending himself, see how he's reacting, are his reactions slow, is he his eyes drooping, and I thought that was real good refereeing considering this was 1990, so you're talking 30 years ago, may I add. Jesus.
Sure. Unfortunately, that camera angle wasn't great for us to see. We did get to see what the ref was seeing. He parted him, he stared straight in the face of Nigel Benn. You're absolutely right. His head was wobbling. He took a real close look, looked into his eyes, and when Eubanks went straight in on him, took a couple of more hits. Clearly, the ref saw that something wasn't right, and great stoppage. Yeah. It's always good to see a fight stopped when it should. I think that eye overall, I wonder whether he's going to get through to 12 rounds anyway with that eye. It was only ever going to start closing up more. Good fight overall. Very, very close. I just feel like if it was going to reach the 12 rounds and we take that knockout out of the equation or the referee stoppage out of the equation, I think this was going to steer towards Eubank's favour.
Indeed, it was a great performance. It was a great fight all round.
Yeah.
I can't believe how quick the ring filled up after the bout. It was unbelievable. There was hundreds of people in there.
Yeah.
And in many ways, this was Chris Eubank's kind of defining victory as a as a boxer, as a superstar, because I feel like up until this point, people didn't always give him the credit that he deserved. And I think Nigel Benn was kind of like the big challenge for him. And he put on a very strong performance. He got knocked down, but he also never really looked in danger of losing via a stoppage. I'm very much looking forward to number 2 next week. I believe, off the top of my head, number 2 goes the full 12 rounds as well. So
that's going to be good.
So indeed. So we'll move on to UFC number 5, the Revenge. No, the Return of the Beast or the Revenge.
Yes.
Which one is it?
The Return
of the Beast.
Yeah.
Return of the Beast. Because of course, not only is Dan Severn coming back after losing in the final, but we also have a Mr. Ken Shamrock.
Coming
back to face Gracie in the UFC's first ever super fight, which again, very interesting little tidbit. And okay, just what did you make overall of the UFC number 5 tournament? Of course, we were introduced to some very familiar names. In obviously Ken Shamrock's back, Dan Severn's back, but we also got to have a little look at Oleg Taktarov.
Yeah. We see some new names coming in that we know become famous over the course of time. So it's just nice seeing some new input of new names. Overall the show was good. The super fight was a bit lackluster, a bit boring. We spoke off air before that. As a little disappointing. There's not really a lot to report on that fight. When we get to it, it's the longest of all the bouts, but the one that you can talk the least about, as much as it was the longest. There wasn't a lot that happened in it. But yeah, the frustrating thing about maybe the early UFCs is the fact that so many fighters couldn't go through to the next round through injuries and different issues. That's what made it frustrating, and that's always going to be the case, I think, with these knockout type rounds where there's such limited rules like there is.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, isn't it? Because there's a couple of guys who had to pull up in these last couple of bouts who I actually think could have really gone on, and I would have liked to have seen them go up against your Hoist Gracies and this sort of thing. So it's unfortunate, isn't it, that they never got the opportunity to test themselves at that level because they had done so well, and then they'd obviously. There was one, I think it was this one, where he had a bruised hand from punching the guy in the skull. And that's so unfortunate because he had been quite dominant in his fight and deserved the opportunity to go and have a go and see if he could push on. And
it didn't. Because this was
the way.
That first fight. There was a massive height difference, wasn't it? So there was a guy 5'9", and against another guy who was at 6'7". This is when they always like to throw in a giant of a man, don't they, in the early UFCs? And it was actually one of the better fights, I think. This first fight, that Angie and John Ness, I think it was his name. I quite enjoyed this. There's quite a lot of action.
Yes, indeed. So there was a couple of alternate bouts which we don't see, which I'll just kind of go through. So they changed the rules in the last couple where instead of just having substitutes who come in if needs be, they have 4 alternates who have to fight, one for each side of the tournament. So that at least they've earned their way that way. So you had David Bantanu defeated Asbel Cancio via TKO after 21 seconds, and Guy Mezger defeated John Dowdy via TKO after 2 minutes. So they are your 2 alternates who will or won't come into the tournament at some point.
Yeah.
They do. Sorry, mate, I just got a bit distracted there. Okay, so the first rounds. Let's start at the top. We have John Hess, who obviously goes on to have a fairly decent career in martial arts and armies and films and this type of stuff, martial arts generally.
Yeah.
He had a very impressive. He's a big old boy, isn't he?
Yes,
Is he the one
big man.
Huge. Like 6'7".
Yeah. John Ness, big man. He's got like a multi-style, isn't he? He's got like a judo, karate, jiu-jitsu. It was sort of like a traditional, complete martial art, if you can call such a thing. But they both come out absolutely gunning at it, and the shorter guy Andy clearly wanted to get it to the ground, but I think the size of that John Ness, he found it hard to get him down, and John Ness was just throwing crazy elbows, crazy punches, nothing hugely technical about what he's doing. He's just a big man, coming out with mean intentions. And obviously doing the martial arts, he's got some idea on what's going down. So they do go to the ground briefly, but Big John Ness gets up and starts really putting it on Andy, and just really he just overwhelms him with his size and just pure aggression. Nothing particularly tidy about anything that he did. But yeah, it was good. He punched him to the ground, got him to his back, and it wasn't really going to go on any further. Than that, it was over pretty quick.
John Hess trains in Sanso, which I believe is like his own.
Yeah, his own system,
which he created.
He had trained in
like
multiple martial arts.
Fu and he is, kung fu and this different types of stuff. Unfortunately, he breaks his hand on Andy Anderson's skull during the finishing sequence, which will play into our next round. The next quarterfinal match was Todd Medina, who is a Jeet Kune Do, versus Larry Curtin, who is a kickboxer. Jeet Kune Do, for those who don't know, is the way of the intercepting fist. Is a Cantonese abbreviation, martial arts first influenced by the personal philosophy of none other than Bruce Lee. He founded the system on the 9th of July, 1967.
Yeah.
Which, that's kind of cool. I think that Todd Medina is the first of to use the Bruce Lee system in such a big tournament like this.
Yeah.
Talk us through this one, my friend.
Yeah. Both big men as well. Well, one not so in terms of his height, but yeah, this fight actually, I think this is the one that went on for a little while. Let me just, I've got to go back to my notes, even though I've got it here in front of me. This fight actually went on a little bit. I think this is like two guys who are clearly trying to be well-rounded and showed a little know-how in what they were doing. I'm just getting muddled up on which fighters which on here. I did this when I was watching it. I was writing notes, and then I found I was writing notes on the other person's name because I got muddled up who's who with this. But yeah, I mean, the issue I had of this as a spectator watching it was, you see them going for the guillotines with really not knowing. They were sort of holding onto the head and squeezing. But the problem with the guillotine, as they were doing them back then, was always putting one of the guys on their back. And I think it was Todd, wasn't it, that was on his back? Am I getting that right? Yeah, because there's one in the blue. So, yeah, it was Todd that was getting himself on the back. But it was a bit of a slot fest, really. I wasn't seeing anything too technical going along. He couldn't pass the guard. The other guy had no real know-how to get up, and that was the only real issue I had of this. Really, they both didn't have the know-how how to finish. I think that's why this bout went on as long as it did. It was guys with some kind of know-how in each position. They knew what a closed guard was. They obviously had some know-how on what a guillotine was, but just had no finishing capabilities, both with the ground and pound. With the guy being on top and Todd not having any true finishing ability being underneath. And I think this is due to the fact that they were big men with some know-how, but with not the polishing finishes. And this is what happened with big guys. They would get transfixed into a position, and you would get a lot of time in a position with not a lot happening because no one seemed to have much understanding of getting posture. And I think when I was watching this bout, what come to my mind was, because of the ability to headbutt, it would make the guy on top keep their posture down. And I think this kind of crowded their work for ground and pound. And as we've got to know, that when you're in a closed guard and you want to be successful with your ground and pound, you want to have a high posture, or even better, get a high posture and stand up in that closed guard. We wasn't seeing that. We were seeing the guy stayed really down low, looking for headbutts that he didn't even know how to utilize properly. Which was keeping his posture down, so he had no real true ground and pound effort, and he sort of just slumped past his guard. We see some groin shots. Do you remember seeing the groin shots on this one?
Yeah, they were
trying to do similar to Keith Hackney and Joe Sung.
They weren't
I don't think that
Joe Sung's.
No, it wasn't as bad. I don't think he was hitting him on the button, but he did get past the guard. He did get a little success. with his top position there. I'm just trying to remember how this one ended. Bear with me. Do you remember how this one ended?
This one was TKO via.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and nothing truly exciting.
Submission
It was
by
one.
forearm choke.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't a great one. Wasn't utilised properly by any stretch. I actually don't think he tapped because it was a submission. I just think he was tired and couldn't find a way to get back on his feet.
I thought that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you say, it wasn't a technical masterclass by any means. It was just a bit of a
and that's the issue with just the big guys of that era, really. There was no finesse movements. You do see, someone who's perhaps more skillful in the next bout. He's a bigger guy but knew how to move in that Oleg Taktarov. I think things were different with those type fighters. Obviously, he went on to have quite a big career or a successful career. Become a well-known fighter than the other two that we'd seen. They sort of like had their fights and then come off the radar somewhat on the MMA scene. But yeah, that was a frustration for me back then with the big guys, was the inactivity.
Yeah, they didn't quite know how to keep it going. Even when they were like transitioning, from guard to side control or whatever, they wouldn't be a great deal of strikes. And stuff like that. So you could see it is getting, from UFC 1, mind, this is like another level altogether. This tournament, but it's still nowhere near the current day. Okay, so the next bout was Oleg Taktarov versus a Samba fighter, world champion of Samba at the time, and I think he was champion at various things. Obviously, he went on to be a pretty successful actor, mixed martial artist. He fought in UFC and Pride and did very well for himself. He faced Ernie Vedisha, who was an American Kenpo. American Kenpo is also karate, basically.
That kind of surprised me because he fought like a wrestler. So I imagine there was a bit of a wrestling. I think there was a wrestling background in there that obviously he fought rather favoured because he looks like a pretty strong man. He's pretty intense as well. I mean, he used open hand strikes as well. I don't know whether you observed that. Very, very similar to Keith Hackney. And I think this was a little evolution of thinking about the rounds ahead. I think he was perhaps saving his fists for the later bout. So obviously, had plans of going on. He wasn't doing it in there for a fad. He was in there for the real deal. And it absolutely looked like it. He really put Oleg Taktarov under pressure, just with his size. Really wide base. Definitely think there's wrestling because he had good sense of base. He had that really wide stance. He was in the one hooks guard of Oleg Taktarov. But look how cool Oleg was. Obviously, he's been in numerous difficult situations in training. This was not an issue for him. Dead relaxed. He was waiting. He was patient. And that's what really impressed me. And it was unusual as well to see someone choose to be in their gi and stay in their gi. This is, normally we see just BJJ guys in hoists and some of the judo practitioners that would keep their gi on, and in the very, very even earlier UFC, you would get your karate guy stay in their suit. But so it's quite unusual to see him in his suit, but he stayed really, really cool, and I think that's what ended up getting him his success. He did punt for the leg to try to look for an armbar, but I think Ernest was just too big, too heavy, and it made his hips switch a little bit too slow. Ernest was keeping high posture. He was obviously aware of the submission. Don't think he was a submission artist himself by any stretch, but was obviously aware of potential dangers. He pushed through a nasty headbutt. Do you remember seeing that? He sort of like jumped with both feet.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it could have been so much worse. And again, just the calmness and the awareness of Oleg. He had a two hooks guard at the time, which kept Ernest really quite far back, that stopped him being able to penetrate that headbutt to be hugely consequential. Oleg started to look to sit up to activate those hooks. So anyone who knows jiu-jitsu, which is a lot of people that would be listening, knows that when you got hooks, ideally you want to be set up, and you could tell he was looking to be active with those hooks because he tried to sit up with them, but he was able to sweep him by not even being set up in the end. Quite, really, because Ernest was stacking forward so much, he kind of ended up overshooting his base. He got single hook swept straight into a scarf hold, which is something you don't see very often in the modern day of MMA. And kind of pulled up on the neck, which I can't remember the actual name of it, what they do now, but basically it's a bit of a catch wrestling move more than anything else. But I think they do have that in Sambo, obviously, because he performed it. But you get that scarf hold and you put pressure on the chest and pull up on the neck. Now, because you put it up on the neck, you might think that it's a choke, but it compresses the lungs and as well as restrict the blood flow and airflow to the neck, but it really suffocates your lungs when someone pulls up and knows how to do it properly. Some judokas are very, very good at it, and it was a real nice finish. If you think about that bout, Ernest spent all his time on top of Oleg. As soon as Oleg got on top, the bout was pretty much over within 5 or 6 seconds. Which goes to show that Sambo, with that submission skill and ability, rather than that fight with that Todd, there was two guys that never really knew what they was doing in a big way. There was just a little bit aware, and to me that fight finished with this forearm press that wasn't even utilized or done properly. But so I think that was the first sign of someone else in the mix of UFC that was actually a skilled fighter. I was quite impressed with Oleg back then when I saw this fight.
Yeah, Oleg, you alluded to it a bit there, how cool he was, and real pressure, by the way. He was mounted, and there was periods where you thought, oh, is he gonna? Because I didn't know the result of this before, and I was looking at it and I was thinking, oh, is he gonna pull this off? A bit of a shock, because he had a bit of pressure. He hit him with a big headbutt. He was there. And it was, there was times where I did wonder, but Oleg never wondered. He knew he was completely in control.
Yeah.
Maybe not of the fight, but mentally, not once did he at any point feel like he was in trouble. You could just see by his whole demeanour, he was just waiting for that. As soon as Ernie tired, I think, and then he made that little error. And it was game, set, and match after that, wasn't it? It was all over. And like the choke didn't look like that. Like it didn't look that. Was it a choke? This one?
It's like the one we just see with Oleg.
Yeah.
Yeah, that triangle.
It was like, it didn't seem as if it was like, it didn't seem like really locked in, as if like, oh my god, he's gasping for air. So I do wonder whether there was a bit of tiredness there as well. I think you said that as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
Next up was Dan Severn, last year's losing finalist, versus John Charles. Dan Severn, a wrestler.
Joe Charles, wasn't it? Joe Charles.
Sorry,
it's
judoka.
Yeah.
Judoka.
Yeah, and, Joe Charles. I think if I remember that name, he had fought in other no holds barred matches.
Joe Charles.
But didn't linger around on the scene too long. But I think he'd had experience before this bout.
He fought in the UFC. UFC from 1994, so the year before this, till 2000. So he did a good 6-year stint in the UFC. Which, it's no mean feat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this one.
Sorry, mate, to interrupt you there, mate. I just wanted to say, John Hess was fined $2,000 for fouls committed in his fight with
really?
Andy Anderson. It doesn't say what the fouls were. I will try and find that out in the.
It may well have been the elbows on the spine, because they might have had that as illegal at that point.
Okay. I shall look into that now, just as we're.
Yeah, that's kind of curious.
Because they weren't too up on the old rules, really, at this point, were they?
I think they was beginning they were starting to introduce time limits, and they were beginning to make it more of a sporting event rather than a pure no holds barred. So I think some rules were getting put in place now, wasn't they? And
Yeah,
I do
a
wonder
little
whether
bit,
it was
yeah.
the elbow to the spine.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find that out now, just while we're talking. So yeah,
Yeah.
take it away. Where were we? Dan Severn versus Joe
Yeah, Joe Charles. Yeah, I
Joe
thought this was
Charles.
going to be more interesting on the feet than it was, because you had a wrestler versus a judoka, and both big men. I mean, Dan Severn, we know, steamrolls many of his opponents. He's a big man who could wrestle really well, and he would smother and just overwhelm his opponents. But Joe Charles is a big man himself, and a judoka. I thought his sense of balance would maybe keep him on his feet a little longer, but it didn't really. You could tell he had a little fight there, but it weren't long before it was put to the floor. Had some ability to try to potentially get up, but Dan Severn used classic wrestling ground control, bracing that head and neck, kept him down. Joe Charles tried for an armbar, but there was no BJJ practitioners as such, other than Hess back then. So it was very much big man judo style armbar that was so obvious that even Dan Severn saw it coming, pulled up out of it, span to the back of Joe Charles, and choked him out in quick succession. And Dan was, beginning to look like a real dominant force. Being that he was quite successful in the previous UFC. You're beginning to wonder whether anyone could potentially stop him anymore.
Yeah, he's starting to look like a real machine, wasn't he?
Yeah,
It's it's very interesting to watch his. In fact, all of them. They're just watching their evolution as a sport, and just just watching it each year progress, the new rules, the improvement in the fighters, the shape of the
yeah,
fighters, the styles which are successful. Early on, no one could grapple, so
yeah,
if you had any sort of grappling skills, particularly if you were as skilled as someone like Gracie, that was it.
yeah,
You
yeah.
were unstoppable. Um, Whereas now, obviously, as time's going on, you're seeing more, other different styles of
Yeah.
kind of.
I, I think really from the previous UFC and this one with Dan coming on the scene, this was the era where wrestlers started to really come on the scene and be seen as that dominant force.
Yeah.
All wrestlers had to do was become submission aware, and that was going to put any striker on their back. They just didn't always have the finishing capabilities, but they started to learn to do the ground and pound. I don't think Dan Severn was ever the greatest ground and pounder, but you started to get other wrestlers that were. Um, so I think this was the real dawn, early stages of how effective wrestling was going to be in MMA. I don't think it was ever seen as a self-defense or an effective fighting system, but as time would tell, before in UFC 4, 5, and onwards, wrestlers would have quite a big impact on the style of MMA.
Yeah. Did you feel that? Obviously, we were quite critical. Not quite critical, but the one thing we were critical of, in
Mm,
terms of Dan Severn in his last appearance, which was obviously last week for us, was
yeah,
his striking. He had the opportunity to ground and pound versus Hoist a lot during
sure,
the
yeah,
final, and he didn't take advantage of it, and he ultimately,
no,
paid the
yeah,
price. Um, did you feel like his striking had improved this time around?
yeah, aware, and he obviously started to do something. He didn't have to rely on it. I think his game plan was always going to be the same. He's a big man, could wrestle really well. He was going to put people on their back and overwhelm them as early as possible. Um, and in this UFC, he was just really running through people. I just felt like you're right. I'd already said it in the previous one. He just fought a really bad strategy, but adapting strategies and things like that wasn't in great evolution back then. He had got where he wanted to get Hoist back in that previous, UFC, and was, oh, I've got him where I want him to be, and I've got to try and find my win from there. I just think he should have kept standing back up, reshooting in until he took Hoist down where he had a more advantageous position, such as taking him down into a side control position. Because although Hoist is a much more proficient grappler than Dan, I think strategically Dan would have got some more, perhaps more effective headbutts, more effective ground and pound from a side control perspective. If he was going to be settling inside that closed guard, certainly if I was in the corner, I would have been getting him to stack up, stand up, get that head height, and rain down some punches and elbows and really pressurize the guard of Hoist. But that didn't happen. But it did seem that Dan had evolved his ground game more. He was getting around. He showed that choking capability in that previous bout. So I do think he was evolving and improving at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so the first semi-final was supposed to be John Hess versus Todd Medina, but John Hess had pulled out because he broke his hand on the skull of Andy Anderson. So David Bentua took over and faced Todd Medina.
Yeah, Dave was not waiting around. He got him down very, very early. Got into side control. Todd Medina, again, we've already seen in the previous bout, really, he's not got a great ground bout. He's aware of things, but that's about as much as it went to. He was just holding on to the arms in side control. He's being side controlled, and Todd Medina was just holding on to the arms to try to limit any potential damage that might come from Dave. But it wasn't long before the position just got even worse, where it becomes even harder to defend against potential strikes he gets mounted. And you can tell he just doesn't know how enough. Okay, he's bumping the hips, but he didn't know how to turn the hips to the side and bring his arms into play. Dave rises up, gets ground and pound. He wanted none of it. He just didn't have the capabilities to get back off the ground. And Dave was looking pretty strong here. This was making for an interesting bout with Dan, because a big, strong guy, aggressive, clearly got some wrestling capabilities. A well-deserved win. Made short work of Todd.
Yeah, I thought so. I was intrigued because I think the alternatives aren't always the greatest, and also the thing which struck me about it is obviously I think it was the last one, or it might have been UFC 3, where an alternative ended up winning the final, coming in just in the final and winning the whole tournament, and it kind of took the edge off it a little bit, because you like to see someone go through the tournament, win their matches, and go that way to do it. So that was a bit but I felt like Dave Bentua or Bentunu was pretty good, and I thought he was quite impressive in this. Todd Medina I think he'd been in at least one previous UFC.
Right.
So he had a bit of experience. He was no slouch.
I think back at that time, because there was no BJJ around in any meaningful way in America at the time. I think there was, a lot of people going into gyms, kind of just trying to figure it out themselves at this point, especially in the States. So you could see that they was giving it thought. They were trying to prep themselves up. But as we know, without like really extensive work in any specific area, you're not going to bring, much success to the ring or cage. You have to really get your pressure performance up. So if you are going to work your ground game and improve it, you kind of like have to do that extensively in training and do some tournaments. I get my guys to do BJJ tournaments. I don't just want them to learn the ground in the club and learn on the job in MMA. If they want to be MMA fighters, I say, look, you've got to sharpen your tools. Let's get you some amateur kickboxing fights so you can't take it to the ground. Let's do it so your mindset is forced into the striking realm, and get your pressure performance up there. Let's not just learn your MMA to avoid the ground. Let's get you in BJJ tournaments so the ground is not alien to you, so you are confident there, so you are aggressive there. So I'll get them to do the jiu-jitsu tournaments as well. But yeah, I think you could see that some of their training was probably being done. I remember seeing interviews way back when, I can't remember the name of the fights, but in the early UFCs, and they would talk about going around to each other's garages that kitted out, and that they were trying to suss out things in the garage amongst themselves. I wish I could remember. I can't remember the name of the guy off the top of my head, but I know he's getting interviewed. It was an interesting interview back then as it was when I was listening to it. But yeah, he was basically saying that they would go to each other's training garage. They were figuring it out, and they were doing all their training with no gloves on. And their missuses and wives were complaining that they was going back home with all these cuts and bruises on them. But yeah, it was still primitive in the big scheme to how we know to train today. But they had to they had to just figure it out as they went, didn't they? Much of it.
Yeah, but it was clear. Even it was clear to the fighters, wasn't it? As clear as it is to us that you needed to have, uh, you needed to have like that grappling defense at the very least. So these
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
were trying to do their best to get access to it. Like now it's a lot easier to get access to
mm,
BJJ training or
yeah,
grappling and wrestling, whereas
yeah,
perhaps back then it was a bit more tricky. Um, okay, so the next the other semi final was the fight I was looking forward to the most actually, which
yeah,
was Oleg Taktorov versus Dan Severn,
yeah,
which
yeah.
went
This
four
one was,
minutes 21.
yeah, this was absolutely much more exciting for me, and the actual fight was quite good and interesting as well. So it weren't just the pre-fight excitement of what might happen. The actual events that did happen were quite exciting. We know that Oleg Taktarov's got some striking ability. We know he has some kind of knowledge with the takedowns, and he's got knowledge clearly of the submissions from his previous fight. And we know he was a cool cat, so his pressure performance was going to be up there. Dan Severn did what we know Dan Severn would do. He was the bigger man, the better, superior wrestler. He took Oleg down. Oleg was completely calm, but look at the difference in awareness. So you can, like I say, you were seeing an evolving Dan Severn, not so much for his striking, but for his grappling. He was getting it down using his wrestling skills, and Oleg was firing up his hips, searching for arm bars and other things. And for the first time, we see Dan Severn using a posture inside a closed and open guard to try to get effective ground and pound. Now, his ground and pound was not that good. You kind of got to draw your elbow back further back than your shoulder to be able to piston pump down those arms. He would kind of like rabbit punching a little bit as much as he was getting some posture, but he was creating a really open guard of Oleg, which was giving him some guard pass opportunities. And that was really exciting to see. So we was actually seeing, instead of a boring staying closed guard wrestling match that we've seen so many times before, we've actually seen that wrestler rise up, allowing for the guy to be underneath with a good guard game, to be playing an open and a counter attacking guard, but it was allowing the wrestler to also get his successes, to pass the guard, to get some ground and pound. At one point I thought this was going to be over, because Oleg starts to nail in an armbar. But this is where I think the first time you see the fact that a fence can actually go against you. The fence went against him. I think if this was out in the middle of the cage, you might have seen Oleg be able to open up his hips and nail this armbar. But he was crumpled against the fence. You started seeing horrible knees. And, again, this was the evolution of the thought process of Dan Severn. He knew how to be aggressive with his wrestling capabilities, and he dropped those knees in and opened up a nasty cut on Oleg Taktarov's face. Was keeping heavy on Oleg's hips, so he couldn't express his hips to get that armbar going, and just continued to ground and pound on him. It started looking really horrible, and started doing headbutts as well. So this was quite surprising, because Dan Severn always seemed a bit of a gentleman with the way he fought, but he was now dropping knees down on people. He was headbutting. He was really making it look ugly. And eventually you get Big John McCarthy split it up and stop the fight. You see enough of what he was seeing. I think he knew Oleg Taktarov was not going to be able to get himself out of that situation. I think he saved Oleg from an even worse beatdown, because we know what Oleg's like. You're going to have to submit him and put him asleep. You're going to have to knock him out unconscious to stop him. He would have kept carrying on no matter how cut up he got. And a good call to stop the bout by John McCarthy.
Yeah, and I think the other thing as well, this is where you're seeing the UFC evolving with rules and the referees
Yeah,
being allowed to
yeah,
step in when they feel that the fighters are taking punishment which they're not going to get out of.
yeah,
So yeah, I think it's a weird one, isn't it? Because you're right. I think if Taktorov hadn't been by the fence, he'd have been able to lock that armbar in, and you might have had him winning, but he
yeah.
couldn't. And
No,
Dan Severn, because he was up against the fence, was able to really nail those knees in and get the headbutt and open him up. And
yeah,
there we go. So
yeah,
the final of the tournament, but not the final fight of the UFC 5, was Dan Severn versus the alternate David Bentonil, which Dan Severn won via submission, key lock
yeah,
submission, after 3 minutes and a second.
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Enjoy that.
yeah. I did enjoy the bout. Yeah, Dan Severn.
Pretty
In
dominant,
the
wasn't
big
it?
scheme. Yeah, I think Dan Severn's potential final really would have been with Oleg. I think if anyone was going to beat Dan Severn, it was going to be Oleg with a submission. You see him teasingly get close, but that didn't happen. And yeah, Dave never really. Dave was a big, strong guy, aggressive, had the potential to make an exciting fight, but Dan Dan did what Dan was doing back then, and he put the beast on him and made short work of him overall
Oh
for a
yeah.
final.
Yes, he did. And then the final fight on this card was UFC's first ever super fight,
Yes.
which was Ken Shamrock, the world's most dangerous man, as it's
Yeah,
put,
he didn't
versus
look it though,
Royce
did he?
Gracie. He
Yeah.
did not look it in
Um,
this fight. This fight
yeah,
went 36 minutes and 6 seconds to a draw.
yeah. It's pretty boring. I think this was all for Ken to win, and he kind of fought Hoist how Dan Severn did. He took him down, got in a closed guard, and stayed there. Clearly, Ken was the potential better striker, and he was the better wrestler. He should have been finding an opportunity to get some ground and pound off, and when the guard would get open, stand back to his feet, draw Hoist up so that he could get a takedown in a way where he'd have a better advantageous position, such as a side control or potential mount maybe, or to strike on the feet with Hoist. But he was happy to stay, or not happy because he looked nervous to be there, but he just stayed in the closed guard, getting his kidneys heel kicked. And all he was doing was being so tight in the closed guard, he was stopping Hoist really having any attempt at any decent submissions. Hoist just did what he could do. Hoist couldn't really steer the fight any other way. He kind of like was never going to take Ken down and put him on his back. He was only ever going to potentially maybe be able to sweep Ken, but I think his base was too good. Um, he was never going to outstrike Ken either. So Hoist just had to play with what he's got, which was the close and open guard. And I think, to give it to him, he was really trying to put this match away. He probably landed more strikes against Ken than Ken was landing against him, especially with those heel kicks taken into account. And he was trying to do that sleeve choke. And I think a couple of times he kind of made it uncomfortable for Ken, but Ken was just being so cagey. It became really hard to watch. It was so tempting to keep dabbing my finger on the screen and fast forward in 10 seconds, but I did enjoy the whole lot. And I could have got away with doing it, and I wouldn't have missed anything that new. It was a ball fest. They get to the end of their 30 minutes, and then they do a 5-minute extra, didn't they? They did like an extra time
Yeah.
thing on there. But again, the same situation ensued very, very quickly. There was a strike that landed and a headbutt that Ken managed to get, which caused damage to Hoist's eye. But it goes the distance and gets a draw. I think. Am I right? We heard boos with this one. I think we heard boos from the crowd. I think they
Yes.
were now
Oh,
becoming more educated. I don't think the boos were for Hoist in particular, but I think maybe steered towards Ken, but quite possibly steered towards the way the bout went, because it had the potential to be so much more exciting than it was.
yeah, and it's just not the Ken Shamrock that you go on, and we see for many years after this.
Yeah,
The
he
aggressive
become
striker and the
yeah,
guy who
he become a
finished
lot
many
better than this.
people.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
he was
he was
just
fighting
afraid
nervously.
to lose again.
Yeah, yeah, fighting. I think he saw it as success to go the distance and get a draw. I think he knew that people were thinking that Hoist was almost unbeatable at this point, and to
He would
get a draw
submit him
against
again,
him
yeah.
to him was going to benefit him more than it did Hoist. But yeah, it was a shame. I think it had the potential to be so much better than it was, and as much as I liked Ken as a fighter back in the day, I was left disappointed with this performance, both
Yeah,
back then
yeah,
and
yeah. I
now
was.
watching it back.
It
Yeah,
was. It was not good. Uh, and unfortunately, we're going to finish on two fights which weren't great, which is
yeah,
a shame because the Chris Eubank Nigel Batten fight was fantastic, and some of the fights within the tournament were pretty good.
yeah.
John Hess. Okay, let's tell you about this fight.
Oh, you found out.
So John Hess mixed martial arts career came in the UFC, blah blah blah, tournament 5. He beat Andy Anderson by TKO at 1 minute and 20 seconds. The fight is regarded as one of the dirtiest in UFC history, and Hess was ultimately fined $2,000 for
Right.
2 violations against the rules, both for eye gouging.
Oh, right.
Hess has defended his actions, citing that the UFC billed itself as no rules, and therefore there were no rules to break. However, despite the marketing slogan, the UFC events did have a limited list of forbidden techniques,
Right.
and the infractions could only result in a fine. He withdrew with a broken hand from the tournament.
Right.
You know, they were very clear that there was 1 or 2 things that you weren't allowed to do,
Sure.
and eye gouging was on that. And obviously, the other thing with the Ken Shamrock fight, just going back to that, is there was no judges at this point. So because this was a one-off super fight, they put a time limit on it, but there was no judges to say,
Sure.
so and so won.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good job they did put a time limit on it, because that could have gone on for hours, and that would have killed the sport there and then. Or it would have that would have been a big rule changer if they hadn't brought it in. It would have been brought in thereafter.
Indeed, and obviously that was at the time that was one of the longest ever UFC bouts. Okay, so we're going to finish off. We're going to finish off not just the show, but we're going to finish off the Gracie family killer, or what was he? The Gracie hunter. Kuzushi Sakuraba versus Royce Gracie 2, which was held at Pride Fighting Championships 2000. I tell a lie. That when we're talking about the one from 2007, which was at K1 Dynamite in the USA. Obviously, the first one we covered a couple of weeks ago as Pride 2000. We've also covered Renzo Gracie versus Sakuraba and Royler Gracie versus Sakuraba. I felt like this bout was the weakest of the 4 that we've covered from this feud. I didn't, or certainly the least enjoyable for me anyway. And also it kind of took off the shine off it that obviously Royce Gracie got tested positive for steroids after the bout as well.
That's right. I mean,
correct me if I'm wrong, mate. Is K1 that kickboxing?
K1's basically kickboxing. And out of all the formats out of all the formats of striking, that's the one I enjoy watching the most.
Oh, okay.
This
was like a one-off special event match.
Our JB Graham's our K1 and Thai boxing coach. Although he does teach the style of Thai boxing, he'll be more well known for his K1 style fighting, and he's the one that I send all my guys for their hands to Lee Edwards. I send all my guys that once they've got their hands and their footwork and balance, I send to this guy called JB Graham. He's produced world champions. Tim Thomas, he was a world champion under his coaching. Really knows his stuff about striking. A phenomenal addition to the BST Academy team, and you could tell this. JB Graham's an intelligent coach, because he'll pick my brains about what MMA is all about, and he'll adapt that K1, which only needs a little tweak regarding the awareness of takedowns and stuff. He's willing to put in those tweaks when he trains my guys, and it works really, really well. K1's good style, good, really realistic, effective style.
Cool.
Yeah.
Quite the team.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want you to talk me through this utter bore fest. No, talk me through this.
It was
2 hours, so we'll...
It had its moments where it was frustrating. It started off a little exciting. You get Sakuraba land a quick leg kick and knocked Royce off his feet with a right cross, and knocks him over, gets him on the ground. And it very quickly looked like it was going to go how the previous fight went, with Sakuraba standing up, kicking the guard. They actually saw Royce kicking Sakuraba's legs a lot more. ends up trying to scramble up, gets his back taken with like a 2-on-1 Kimura prep. They stand back to their feet. Hoist gets on the back. Now, for me, Sakuraba just didn't look quite the physical crispness that he's looked in previous
No, he did not.
years. I think he had accumulated another 20 or so bouts in between the last time that they fought 7 years prior. I mean, that's a lot of fights. And we know he'd fight anyone, any weight. He had real physical, hard fights against Vanderlei Silva. You got to remember back out at that time, Vanderlei would have been juiced to the eyeballs, and what a scary prospect, physically in his prime and on gear, a devastating striker. So yeah, they would have accumulated a lot of damage on Sakuraba, and I feel like you saw a Sakuraba that had already had some of the fight taken out of him, but by the same token, I think maybe Hoist was at his possibly his physically best, whether you put that down to perhaps steroids that he's been accused of taking. Didn't look like it by his physique. He's quite a gangly, not particularly strong looking man. He certainly didn't look heavily bulked like you would imagine someone who took steroids. So I'm not saying that he didn't take them. If he tested positive, he's guilty in the eyes of the law, as it was back then. But I just felt like Sakuraba in this fight was slightly a lesser man, and maybe Hoist was a little bit more of a man and was meeting force on force a little bit more effectively against Sakuraba, because he had moments where he was on Sakuraba's back standing up. Didn't make a loads of it, but nevertheless it still scores. I don't know how they were scoring the bouts in terms of their round breakdown in this event, because it was a different event, the Dynamite K1 event. It was a different total event, so how they were judging it, who knows. You would initially think with the knockdown it would have gone in favour of Sakuraba that round. Second round, yeah. What would you think of the first round? Is that pretty much how you saw it?
Yeah, so they scored. The judges scored it 30-27 in the first round, 29-28, and then 29-28 all for Gracie.
Yeah.
I thought Sakuraba probably took the first round, just about.
Yeah, I would say. But the second round was a bit different. Like I say, this is where I started to suspect that Sakuraba wasn't at his best. He looked a little bit more tired. He looked like he struggled to get Hoist down. You did see him get Hoist in a tie clinch, but Hoist was showing, true grit and determination. Was body shotting Sakuraba in return. Sakuraba tried to take Hoist down. He just didn't have it in him to get him down so easily. It took him numerous attempts at the hips to try and suck him in. Momentarily threw him down to his right, but Hoist was straight back up. I think something was amiss here with Sakuraba. I think Sakuraba of hold would have ragged Hoist down a little bit more. Or are we perhaps underestimating the improvements that Hoist had made? Because clearly he had made some. He had some kind of striking ability.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he had some kind of striking ability, and some know how to stay on his feet a little bit more. So,
no gi.
And done a no gi, which I think helped him, because I think it went against him against Sakuraba. But Sakuraba looked really tired going back after the second round, and you could argue that Hoist won that round.
Yeah, I think I had Hoist winning the second round. I do think Hoist had improved massively from a striking perspective.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I just felt like whether Sakuraba was just a bit fatigued after so many bouts in the past couple of years, or maybe we were witnessing like the kind of the start of the downhill in his peak in his performance.
I think he's past his best.
I'm not 100% sure, but this bout it took a lot of criticism. This bout, I think putting it on the K1 card was probably a mistake.
I agree. Because, like I said, I don't know how they were judging it.
And they would have been expecting, they've just witnessed a full card of explosive, aggressive striking battles, and then you're going to some mixed martial arts bouts, like what we just talked about with Ken Shamrock.
Sure.
It's never going to be greeted well by the fans in attendance. And also the reviewers and people who at the time. And also, what didn't help it was there was no commentators. So, like you in the previous bouts, you had Baz Rutten was doing
Yeah,
the commentating, who's very good. You had
yeah,
no
I like
commentators,
Bess.
and then you just had this annoying bloke who was talking to the crowd almost and encouraging the fighters to fight, and
Mm,
I didn't like that at all.
yeah.
And I got to say, I was I'm not a fan. Go on, talk me through the
Yeah,
third round.
yeah. So the third round, do see that Hoist get, or he didn't get put to the ground. He shoots in, and one of the things you did notice with this, whether he always had this as a training plan, but he was shooting in for a double. So he obviously trying to work his wrestling aspects for defense, because he was able to stop the takedowns numerous times that Sakuraba was trying to attempt to do. So clearly improved his defensive wrestling, but also was improving his wrestling for the takedown, because he was shooting really low and deep like a proper double should be done. He just doesn't have great physicality. Like we say, he's not the strongest guy. He's quite gangly. He's quite tall. For that weight that they're fighting at. So he was shooting in. He had his arms gaping a little bit, and Sakuraba kept getting the double under pummels on him
Mm.
to sprawl that shoot attempt. So Hoist was then secondarily sitting back to guard. He ended up with a half guard, set up a Kimura hammerlock set up on Sakuraba. Couldn't really get success at getting it off, but it did help him get to the feet, and he ended up working around to Sakuraba's back. And Sakuraba really allowed him to stay there way too long, and Hoist ended up landing quite a few unanswered strikes from his back. And this is where I think maybe the round went against Sakuraba, because he was receiving consequential strikes time and time again.
Yes,
He was
yeah.
just eating them up, and I think that was going down on whatever striking format or however scoring format that they had was going against him. He was being scored upon, and okay, yes, he ended up having a little success at the end of the round by landing in a Kimura attack himself on Hoist. I don't think it would have got anywhere. I think Hoist is just too high level on the ground to have let Sakuraba get him in a submission, which was going to complete. And yeah, we got the end of the round. The decision comes out and went in favour of Hoist. It could have gone either way initially, but this was not the best of Sakuraba, and possibly some of the best that we've seen Hoist do. But overall, not a great bout to watch. It was not overly exciting. I think the fact that it wasn't exciting was the fact that Sakuraba couldn't make it exciting because he didn't have the the younger, youthful body that he once had. Yeah, so that's how I saw the bout. I'm not surprised it went in Hoist's favour because of that back take situation and those strikes. I think maybe he lost the round just because of that bit. That's my only
So
presumption that I can come to.
with that third round, I feel like I can see why they gave it to Hoyce based, on what you said about when he took his back and he doing the strikes.
Yeah,
However, I feel like if it was being scored by legitimate MMA judges like we get
yeah,
now, I feel
yes,
like they may have given it to Sakuraba because he did threaten with several submissions throughout the round
yeah,
and ended the round threatening with I think it
sure.
was I forget what it was, but
He's
some sort of
got a two on
submission.
one camera. Yeah,
So it's like he was attacking, but he was only attacking via submissions, and I feel
yeah,
like these judges didn't appreciate that in terms of appreciate what that was and
yeah,
that it was a legitimate form of attack. I can
yeah,
see why they gave it to Gracie, but I wouldn't have been surprised if you had told me that Sakuraba won the first and third round. Um,
yeah.
the fact they scored all three to Gracie is
Yeah,
also
and
puzzling.
this was in America, right? I believe
Yeah,
this
yeah,
this
it was
this
in
show was held in
America. They
America.
did
I think had this
Las
been in
Vegas.
Japan, it would have gone in. It would have gone the other way around. Um,
Oh yeah, God, yeah.
but uh, possibly one of the first times that Sakuraba fought outside his country. I think
Yeah, I
that
don't think
perhaps
he
needs
fought
a
many
little
times outside.
investigation to. And yeah, it went against him possibly for that reason. But I just think there's a big question mark on how this was being judged because who were the judges? Were they K1 judges? I don't know what type of judges were. Were they MMA judges brought in for this bout? I don't actually know. Um, but yeah, but there didn't seem no disappointment on either of them. They hugged at the end of it. They seemed to have the utmost respect for each other. Um, yeah, and it kind of completed their little feud.
Indeed, and we're gonna do that's gonna be the first of our we're gonna do a video little 10-minute video on of YouTube on the feud between
Yeah.
Sakuraba and the
Yeah.
Gracie family at some point. We're just
Sure.
trying to work out when, and we're gonna move on and do some other
Sure.
little feuds.
Yeah,
and
you
different
just let me
things.
know. Yeah, I can fit it in, just not on different days and that. We can work
Of
around
course.
it.
So yeah, obviously Hoist Gracie was found to have tested positive for steroids afterwards. I know his victory remained intact on his record because apparently it was a tainted supplement, and I think there's actually a bit of a scandal around it, and there's just judging by what I can
Yeah,
read now, but
it's
it was never legally overturned, or
yeah,
K1
it's
Dynamite
really
could not legally
yeah. I
overturn
mean,
it. So.
that testing. I mean, yeah, he could have taken it. I don't know whether the Gracie family would ever
No,
put
I
their
don't think
name
so.
at risk of taking it. And he doesn't look. He did look in good shape.
It didn't
Clearly,
look
he knows he needs to be
juiced though,
stronger. And
did
it
it?
looked like, yeah, it's so hard to really know. But we really put the legacy of the whole family name to risk.
Just to
I
beat
really don't know.
Sakuraba, yeah, in
Yeah,
a
I don't know whether
non-title
he would. So yeah, I
K1
mean,
show.
was someone trying to sabotage their name? That's a possibility. I just don't know. But initially, look, the fight is what it was. It's in the long distance past. It was an interesting feud that they had, and it all started with Takada. But we get to talk about this, um, when we do our 10-minute review on the whole subject. But it all initially started out with Hickson and Takada, which was the same training camp from Sakuraba. That's where it all started, and it was great. It was good. It has its place in history.
Indeed. I remembered. Obviously, we got to move on. We're going to do UFC 6 next week. Nigel Benn versus Eubank 2, and
Yeah.
then we were asked by someone on Twitter if we would cover Jack Shaw's his career, his rise through Cage Warriors and
Right.
into the UFC fight by
Yeah, but
fight,
that's a good call.
which we will do
Mm.
on one condition, that we are able to get access to the fights, whether it's on YouTube or Fight Pass or whatever.
Oh, of
So
course. Yeah.
that's the plan. I'm gonna have a look, and obviously I'll contact Danny. If not, then we will pick, or I'll ask on social media for a different,
Yeah.
whether it's an MMA rivalry where we can do the fights, like a couple of fights over a couple of weeks, or whether
Okay.
we just pick
Yeah.
a classic MMA bout for next week,
Yeah.
and we do another one the week
Sure.
after, and so
Yeah.
so and so. Um, I know there's some of Jack Shaw's Cage Warriors fights on YouTube, so as long as we
Right.
can get like maybe his debut in Cage Warriors and a couple of other fights, maybe a
Yeah.
title fight, and then his debut
Yeah.
in UFC, that's enough. But
Sure.
if we're gonna do it, I'd like to get his debut and his Cage Warriors title and his UFC debut. They would be the
Right.
three, and then anything after that is obviously a bonus. But yeah, I'm
Sure.
happy to. If you've got any recommendations, guys, just send them to myself and Danny, and we'll always have a look. We're looking for boxing and MMA, classic individual bouts, or kind of like rivalries over a couple of fights or a few fights, which we'll kind of do like we've been doing, split them up over the weeks, and we'll keep going through the UFC shows week by week. Uh,
Hmm.
Check out BST Academy on bstacademy.co.uk. Obviously closed at the moment, so there's not much going on, but hopefully the lockdown will be lifted soon, and we can all get back to some sort of normality.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, check out all our shows on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That is the best way to support the channel. Subscribe is youtube.com/AcePodcastNation, and check us out on all the social media shows and stuff. Tomorrow we have our show with Ben Doherty, Unscripted Uncensored 14, which is a really good one, particularly for fight fans, boxing fans. And Friday, live, The Boot and the Limp, 7 p.m, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Myself and stand-up comedian Barry Phillips break down the world in an X-rated fashion. It's not one for the easily offended, shall we say. If you don't like swearing, maybe skip that one out. If you don't mind it, then come join us for a giggle. Danny, thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Shy, and thank you, listeners, for listening in again. And let's do it all again next week.
Oh, I nearly forgot. Last week's show was the most viewed show that we've ever had.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
We hit like 1,000 views or something. And,
Sure.
The downloads have been progressively going up each week anyway. But I think before that, our show, I think the most watched was like a couple of hundred views. Because we do tend to get more audio listeners than video for this series. However, last week, something in there certainly caught people's attention. So hopefully a nice majority of those will come back.
You know what it is? We're not the best looking guys in the world. That's the problem with it.
Yeah, so they just want to hear us instead. They want to hear my dulcet Welsh tones, but they don't want to see my face. And that's it. There we go. And you've been punched in the face too many times.
Well, I've got an excuse. What's yours?
I haven't been at my house for 6 weeks, so that's what my excuse is. Guys, thank you. Danny, thank you. And we'll see you next week.
Champion,